raising the veil, because that's what this month is about. This month our theme is the power of awareness. Here, I'll do a Dr. Edward, I hope. Whoops. Oh, it happened. Good. Okay. Good. Channeling. So this month we are considering if and how we can expand our awareness of what's going on around us, and therefore to take in more good. We are considering if and how we can expand our awareness of ourselves so that we go beyond thinking of ourselves as a small, limited, separate thing, and instead expand our sense of self to embody more of the infinite goodness of God. More joy, more love, more abundance, more peace, more love. One thing I love when I get to do the talk, and by the way, if we haven't met, I'm Joyce. I'm the assistant minister. Dr. Edward, our senior minister, is at the Chicago Center for Spiritual Living today, and he'll be back next week. Meanwhile, I've had the wonderful opportunity to luxuriate in today's topic. And this time, unusually, not only was I getting thoughts about the topic, but I actually had 2 dreams about the topic. So one of the dreams was based in a real-life experience. Some years ago, my husband and I and daughter, we were in England and we were touring the country, and we spent a wonderful afternoon in Cambridge, just an afternoon. And I so fell in love with that beautiful old town that I had a dream to come back to this town of Cambridge. So in my dream the other night, I was in England, and actually I'd gone with Kim. He was in some conference, and I don't even know what it was, but I had nothing to do. I was just kind of hanging out at this place. I knew we were on the outskirts of some town, and every now and then I'd run an errand, like I'd go to the suburbs of this town, to the equivalent of maybe like a British 7-Eleven. At the very end of the stay, I realized that the town we were outside of was Cambridge, and that I had spent this entire time not aware of that. In fact, I remembered that when we had first arrived, someone had told me that we were near Cambridge. And actually what this is reminding me of, in this dream, I'd been there so close to realizing my heart's desire to spend a week in Cambridge, and I wasn't aware of it. And so it is that I believe that this is the kind of thing we're looking at this month as we consider the power of awareness. Are we seeking something that is already here? And if so, how do we bring it into our awareness? The book we've been using this month as a guide is called The Power of Awareness. It's by Neville. And in the very beginning of the book, he says, this book is to reveal your infinite power against which no earthly force is of the slightest significance. It is to show you who you are, your purpose, and your destiny. And the way he goes about this is by having short readings. Most of them are based on a particular word, a term, which he defines with his own slant. For example, our first week of the month, you might recall, the topic was assumption. And, we usually think of assumption as, this kind of thing that I'm thinking in advance, that I know something about a situation or a person. But that's not how Neville was using assumption. He was talking about the use of our imagination to take on, to assume, to take on what we desire. So that is with today's topic, which is, have you already committed to staying? can you just hold on to the person next to you? Today's topic is righteousness. Yeah. But we're in the right place. He uses the word righteousness to help us remember that, often if we're just using this power of assumption, we might be putting our focus on things we want, a new car, a new house, whatever. So he is talking about righteousness to remind us that we have to remember the feeling, the consciousness of being the person we want to be, who in fact would then have that desired thing. By the way, thanks for coming to hear a talk about righteousness. It's not the most inviting of talk titles, and it's because we often equate the idea of righteousness with self-righteousness, someone being self-righteous. Have you had that experience, being around somebody being self-righteous? So there's an uncomfortable feeling of judgment and blame. Have you ever been self-righteous? I think I have. I think I can feel it in my body. I kind of get this kind of like straightening up and kind of a tensing, and the cheeks go in. It comes up for me around recycling. I am really into recycling. I have those guidelines memorized, So if I'm here at the Center for Spiritual Living, would you believe, and I see something in the trash that could have been recycled, I can feel it coming on up. The other key for me is the words people go through my head. That's how I know when I'm in that mode. But thankfully, that's not what we're talking about today. We're not talking about that kind of sense of a limited self that can separate itself from others and then make judgments about I'm better than you. Instead, we're looking at righteousness from the point of view of our philosophy, which reminds us that we are part of all that is. And because God, Spirit, the Divine One, created everything out of itself, this means that you and I are literally part of God. I often like to join with Hindu philosophers in saying we're part of God as the wave is part of the ocean. But for the purposes of today's talk, I've been thinking that we're part of God as a drop is part of the ocean. And so if that drop drew a boundary around itself and then forgot that it was part of the ocean and started making judgments about the other drops around it, it could be self-righteous. But when that drop remembers that it is part of the ocean of God, then it can be self-righteous. Self with a capital S. We use the capital S to remind us that each of us, myself, yourself, everyone, extends beyond any limitation of a little self into the big self of all that is, the self of God. I want to share with you a very clear example of a differentiation between small s and big S self. It comes from Reverend Barbara Leger. Many of you know Reverend Barbara. She was a member here, and then she went to go on and study to be a practitioner here, and then she became a minister. And then she had one of those moments that a lot of us have had, when something bigger is calling you forward, and it's kind of like a big thing that's going to require a lot out of you. Maybe it's a move to another town or a new job or whatever, but it just won't leave you alone. So it was that Reverend Barbara got the internal call to establish a Center for Spiritual Living in Ukraine. Now, this was 10 years ago. And just take that in for a moment, of Science of Mind Center that is in the Ukraine now with what's going on. This is an email from Reverend Barbara. I just received a new prayer request from our lead practitioners stating that yesterday 50 people were killed in the sweet, peaceful city of Odessa. We pray to be free from judgment and to not succumb to right and wrong and who did this or that. Our job is to not take the self-righteous path of how wrong that is, but rather the higher path of love and forgiveness, knowing that, in fact, God is all that is happening. Our staying anchored in that consciousness helps us to rest in the inner peace, which is our true nature. So, perhaps you'll join me in prayer this week for the center there, in knowing that they can stay in this knowing of peace and good unfolding. By the way, Reverend Barbara is coming to speak to us on Wednesday evening, July 9th, and I really am looking forward to what she has to say about what it's like to be practicing this philosophy in the middle of such turmoil. Now, with this understanding, we can even take our language one step further. You were probably expecting this, and look at self, big self, right use. Self, right use. What is the right use of myself that allows for an ever-expanding awareness that I am one with the Divine One? What is the right use of ourselves that will reveal our largest self, our divine self, and, by the way, bless others? What is the right use of yourself that will lift the veil and reveal, as Neville says, your infinite power, who you truly are? Well, happily, for the past 2,500 years, we've had some guidance from the Buddha. You know, he was the person who said these four rather important things. He said, first of all, look, life, folks, you probably have noticed, it's not satisfying. It's just like kind of restlessness, discontent. You're never satisfied, are you? You know, it's like, I'm tired, so I'll sit down. This chair isn't quite right, I'll sit over here. Oh, actually, my back is still hurting, I'll walk around. Come to think of it, I'm not only tired, I'm hungry. But, oh gosh, there's nothing to eat. That's what he was talking about, that sense of discontent, of not being able to settle in, of restlessness. And the second thing he said was that's based on our attachment. And I'm thinking today in terms of our talk, you know, about how my own sense of how some things are better than others. I'd rather be doing something else than I'm doing now, that kind of thing. The third thing he said was, you know what? There's a way out of this personally created suffering. Well, that got my attention as a 30-year-old at the Zen Center in San Francisco. I said, really, there's a way out of this suffering. What is it? Well, it's called the Eightfold Path. And I looked at that, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And I thought, oh, this is not the magic formula I was hoping for. This looks like some substantial work. This looks suspiciously like rules. In fact, what are these things? Anyhow, what the heck is right thought? Well, now that I've been here at the center, I know that is a lot of the work that we do. We spend time looking at our thoughts, looking at what we're saying, right speech. We spend a lot of times considering things like, is what I'm thinking right now a negative thought that can have the effect of limiting my experience? Or is what I've been thinking an affirmative thought that can have the effect of expanding my experience? Is what's coming out of my mouth, is what I'm saying to someone else based in the idea that I'm right and they're wrong? Or is what I'm saying to someone else reflecting my knowing, my awareness of the truth that both he and I are divine expressions of God? These are just a couple of the examples that we pay attention to here at the center about what we're thinking and what we're saying. So certainly, right thought and right speech is something that we're familiar with as religious scientists. This is a good sentence. Let me get through the rest of it. Yes, as religious scientists, we know that right thought and right speech are actually things that can help expand our awareness from being that little drop in the ocean to realizing that we are that ocean. Right speech, right thought are actually a way to do that. So what about number 4 up there, right action? Well, in studying our philosophy, as we become more aware of our divine power that could be used to do anything, we also become more aware of our unity with everything. And so we become aware that we need to use this power for good. We realize that what we do to others, we are in truth doing to ourselves. In writing about self-expression, our founder, Ernest Holmes, says this: we realize that to attempt self-expression at the expense of others is to defeat the very purpose for which freedom exists. For back of all is a unity. That's our ocean. Then he says, we find that it's the laws of necessity, not moral code, but the laws of necessity that compel experience into the path of true righteousness. He's pointing out that our right useness becomes necessary to our own happiness. He also gives us a really good guideline for right action. This is on page 270. He poses this question if you're thinking about doing something. Does the thing I wish to do express more life, more happiness, more peace to myself, and at the same time harm to no one? If it does, it's right. Page 270. Does the thing I wish to do express more life, more happiness, more peace to myself, and at the same time harm no one? If it does, it is right. So finally, let's take a moment to consider number 7 up there, right mindfulness. This goes beyond right thought. Right mindfulness encourages us to consider, what are we doing with the power of our mind? Are we controlling our mind, or is it controlling us? Have we trained it to do what we would like it to do, or is it just running rampant? This actually brings me to the second dream that I had during the time of preparing for this talk. In the second dream, I was at a Third Wednesday service. Third Wednesday is mid-month sanctuary. It's a service that Chris Fritchie and I do together. However, at the service, everything was chaos. There was furniture stacked in the middle of the room, and people were standing all over the place, and I was in the back of the sanctuary trying to make my way forward through these people who were standing there, and Chris had begun playing our opening song. Our opening song on third Wednesday is always the same, Melissa Felipe's beautiful, I Am Remembering Who I Am. So there I am in my dream listening to I Am Remembering Who I Am. As I try to make my way past two women who were slow dancing to I Am Remembering Who I Am in the aisle, and I look up on stage and I notice that Chris is singing beautifully, but between each phrase, he's smoking a cigarette. Now, at this point, I said to myself, this has got to be, in my dream, I said, this has got to be a bad dream. This can't be real. Followed by the thought, no, it's not a dream. Now, what's interesting to me is that I had hit upon the truth. It was a bad dream. But my mind ignored the beckoning of truth to go back to its habitual dreamlike way of understanding things. One definition of right mindfulness is to be awake and aware of the truth, not only to recognize it, but to follow it as a way out of the suffering, the discontent of our habitual conditioned thinking. So in closing today, I invite you to join with me in exploring whether these four things we've touched upon, these four things of right useness, right thought, right speech, right action, right mindfulness, can they actually be of use? Can they be of any personal benefit to you? Can these four things actually help create a new awareness that brings about a transformation in your life? So I invite you then to take a few moments with me to relax and bring to mind a situation that's been on your mind. And by the way, if you don't want to do this, it's fine, take a nap, whatever. But you might just consider, is there some dilemma in your life, some question, some challenge, or perhaps everything's going very smoothly, but there is one area in your life that you would like to invite more good into. So I invite you to consider, what are the kind of thoughts you have been having about this situation? Have they been limiting in any way? Is there a more expansive thought or thoughts you could be thinking? Another way of saying that is, what is the highest thought you can have about this situation? And just take a moment to consider what you have been saying out loud about this situation or in this situation. Do these things reflect your highest self? Are there other things you could be saying that would reflect your highest self? And in terms of actions, what have you been doing in this situation? Is there something else you could be doing? Perhaps something kinder or braver or wiser? Finally, where has your mental awareness been in this situation? And can you open up that awareness to notice other possibilities?